Mr. Shapiro, thank you for joining us today. I think it is important that you're here as one of the leading conservative voices in the country. And the country has, in the last couple weeks, talked a lot about and Googled Project 2025. It's one of the most Googled search terms right now. And you're not going to get any censorship from me. So I just wanted to know, from your perspective, I think it would help us understand, on just like a scale of 0 to 100%, how much do you support Project 2025?
I think, like President Trump, I haven't looked all that deeply at Project 2025, but it seems that Democrats on this committee, sort of like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, if they say Project 2025 enough, their presidential candidate becomes alive again.
And so, well, let's just talk about pieces of it, and I guess you can tell me if you support it. You probably want less bureaucracy, right?
I do.
I want less bureaucracy. You want more efficiency?
I do.
I want more efficiency. You want taxpayer money spent wisely?
I do. Congrats on becoming a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents would be proud. Mass deportations, it calls for that. Do you support that part?
I support the deportation of any illegal immigrant who is in the United States who is not of benefit to the generalized American public.
So if they're picking agriculture that puts food on the tables of everyday Americans, they've never committed a crime inside the United States, they didn't come across with documents, should they be deported?
If they have not paid taxes and if their draw on the taxpayer benefits are larger than the contribution they are making to the economy, or if they're involved in criminal activity, they should be deported.
How do we measure that?
The same way that the IRS measures my income every year. It seems like if the IRS can track down every aspect of every receipt that I've ever submitted, and
so
they can do so for hundreds of millions of other Americans, they can do that for illegal immigrants as well, except for the fact that no one knows how many are in the country thanks to this administration.
So you would be cool with creating a system where they could pay those taxes if they wanted to and then stay and work and put food on our table?
It depends on how long it would take for them to pay the taxes, and they would also have to go presumably to the back of the line, although I'm not sure why I'm testifying about immigration policy at this point.
How about banning the abortion pill? That's part of Project 2025. Do you support that part?
I think that that's a state-by-state issue on a personal level.
I'm just asking you.
Sure, I'm a fully pro-life person, which means that I'm not in favor of the distribution of the abortion pill.
Banning same-sex marriage, what about that part?
I am in favor of traditional marriage between a man and a woman, and I'm perfectly fine with anyone having any sort of voluntary sexual arrangement they seek. That's a different thing from whether the government should attach benefits to that personal relationship.
But you think it's a sin to have same-sex marriage?
I mean, I'm confused. Are you asking me as a religious Jew what I think about biblically?
I'm just asking, is it a sin to be gay?
Is it a sin to be gay? I mean, how long do we have here? 2 minutes? I mean, if the basic idea is that sexual orientation is up for government regulation, I'm not in favor of the government regulating the private consenting sexual activity of adults. That is a different thing, once again, from whether the government ought to engage in actual benefits for particular sexual arrangements that adults make.
But again, just you to me, is it a sin or not?
From a religious Jewish perspective, orientation is not a sin, but activity is. That's also the same perspective of most major religions, so far as I'm aware.
Okay. And how about cutting Social Security? Do you support that part of 2025?
I'm not sure what Project 2025's position on Social Security is. I'm in favor of the restructuring of Social Security along the lines of privatization and lowering and increasing the retirement age, because you, as well as every other congressperson, knows Social Security is going to go bankrupt, and yet everyone seems to have an interest in lying about it for the next decade and a half until we have to take austerity measures or radically increase inflation or taxes.
And bans against books about slavery. Do you support that part about?
Why would I possibly be in favor of bans about books about slavery? That would be absolutely ridiculous. What I am in favor of is the idea that school libraries should be able to make decisions along the lines of what exactly is appropriate for, say, a 7th grader and whether they ought to be treated to cartoons and genderqueer. That's not quite the same thing.
And just because we found some receipts, you did say, I think homosexual activity is a sin.
Yes, I'm a religious Jew,
I'm
that's
sure
true.
There's a genetic component.
You found me out.
Orientation. But the view of all religious people I know has always been that sexual behavior is something that is up to you. And you said, I may have a desire to sleep with many women, but I do not.
I agree with me. Yes, that's true.
Congratulations on your, I'm sure it's very hard to restrain yourself. Mr. Chairman, I just want to shift to Alvin Bragg. He was supposed to be here this week, and he's not coming. And Hunter Biden was supposed to testify. Now he's not testifying. We were supposed to have votes on articles of impeachment, and we didn't. And again, we're just wondering, you guys write great press releases, but the payoff seems to never come. And so I guess we will keep waiting, and we'll do hearings like this. And finally, Chairman, you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater, and that's a restriction on speech, as you have recognized before, but you can yell theater in a crowded fire, and you all can continue to do that all you want, and we'll just waste the American people's time.
Gentleman's time has expired, and I remind him of the first rule of holes. When you're in one, stop digging.
Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege, and just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory. And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that individuals have as a benefit of their white skin. And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well, to me, what I say on campuses all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm
more
also
interesting
interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would. This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly. But
really,
yeah. But from hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy. I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. Okay, the administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
I just have to say that I object strenuously to your use of the word hilarious. To me, this feels a lot like your reaction to being named in one of these manifestos. Now, you're of course not responsible for the words of somebody writing that document, but I do think that laughing at it is a real problem, because these are real families that are impacted by this violence. And I think our efforts towards talking about this have to start from a place of mutual respect, which is what I've heard from this side of the table. Now, the reason we don't have those numbers, I want those numbers as much as you do, but to say the numbers don't show something is simply not supported by the data.
Okay, and I have 38 seconds left, Ms. Mulligan, if you want to respond within that time.
The only thing I would add is that it's in the name. Terrorism, domestic terrorism, it terrorizes us. It terrorizes us in our homes. It terrorizes us in our schools. And to the points made by the other panelists, it is disproportionate to its impact on any individual life, and it's not.
You reject the idea it's something that doesn't matter, or doesn't really matter?
Absolutely reject.
Okay. All right, so here's where we are. Every member now has had 5 minutes and... I'll go ahead and claim my 5. Okay, and Mr. Clay, so we have 2 members who have not. So I'm going to go to the 2 members who have not yet, and we'll give an opportunity for a closing thought to any member who wants before we go.
Am I next to respond, or is Mr. Meadows?
I thought Mr. Meadows was
Mr.
next.
Meadows, okay.
Mr. Meadows is next, then Mr. Clay, then to you, Mr. Jordan.
Ms. Owens, obviously this is a gang up on you. You know, we're giving these witnesses the ability to do a rebuttal on you, and so you know, I find it unfair, Ms. Ballou. I mean, you know, candidly, for you to show mutual respect and then you to go after Ms. Owens, it's not appropriate. So, Ms. Owens, you can have 4 minutes and 34 seconds to respond. However,
Gentlemen, yield for a second.
I'll yield.
Thank you. I believe, Ms. Owens, when you used the word hilarious, it was referencing the fact that no one had asked you a question. It wasn't to the subject matter of the hearing. Is that right?
That is correct.
And to have another witness insinuate something that is not accurate is just not appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for how witnesses are supposed to behave in front of this committee. I also think you didn't say it doesn't matter about the subject matter of today's hearing. You said there are other subjects that matter as well, and maybe we should spend some time on those. Is that accurate?
That is correct, and they matter much, 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 much more, and I have said that. I said that in my opening, and I will say it again. You know that white supremacy and white nationalism is ranks nowhere near the top of the issues that are facing Black America. And the reason that you are bringing them up in this room is because it is attempt to make the election all about race as the Democrats
Not in my case, Ms.
Please
Owens.
don't
I'm
cut me
sorry.
off.
Please do not characterize my motive.
Mr. Chairman, it's my time.
Yeah,
it's my time.
You've got your time, Mr. Meadows. I'll give you 3 more seconds.
Every 4 years, you bring up race, and you knew exactly what I meant when I said hilarious, and you just tried to do live what the media does all the time to Republicans, to our president, and to conservatives, which is you tried to manipulate what I said to fit your narrative, okay? I was not referring to the subject matter that is hilarious. I said it's hilarious that we are sitting in this room today, and I've got 2 doctors and a missus, and nobody can give us real numbers that we can respond to so we can assess how big of a threat this is, because you know that it is not as big of a threat as you are trying to make it out to be so that you can manipulate. And the audacity of you to bring up the Christchurch shooting manifesto and make it seem as if I laughed at people that were slaughtered by a homicidal maniac is, in my opinion, absolutely despicable. And I think that we should be above that. To try to assign reality or any meaning to a homicidal maniac writing a manifesto, which, by the way, let the record show, also stated Spyro the Dragon, the child's cartoon, as a source of inspiration. He also cited Nelson Mandela as a source of information. I don't think that Nelson Mandela has inspired mosque shootings. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong. You would rather assign meaning to a homicidal maniac than to actually address the things that I said today that are actually harming Black America. Number 1, father absence. Number 2, the education system and the illiteracy rate. Illegal immigration ranks high, abortion ranks high, white supremacy and white nationalism, if I had to make a list again of 100 things, would not be on it. This hearing, in my opinion, is a farce, and it is ironic that you're sitting here and you're having 3 Caucasian people testify and tell you what their expertise are. Do I know what my expertise are? Black in America. I've been Black in America my whole life, all 30 years, and I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. And now